Alright, so here's the drawing of the cube along with the background line and the cast shadow. And when you think of a cube, I want you to think of it primarily as composed of three different values. So on your cube you should see a top side and then two sides. So those values are a light value, a medium value, and a darker value. So I'm working from dark to light, so I'm going to the darkest side first. And the thing is, even though it is the darkest side, there are still some variations within that darker form shadow side. So it's actually going to be more like a gradient. And when you're doing this, I want you to look at that reference photo that's in your clear box there. Because you can see it if you kind of squint and you look closely, that there is a small gradient going on there. So I'm doing a difficult color. I'm doing yellow. And I want to show you how I paint yellow, because if you just use yellow and black, you're going to end up with this kind of army green that's maybe not exactly what you were going for. So I used yellow, black, red. You can even use a dot of blue in there as well. But I made it into a brown. So it's a dark brown. And if you look at yellow objects, they really do turn kind of dark brown, at least on that form shadow side. Okay, so here I'm transitioning it. I'm transitioning this to a warmer brown, more of like an earth tone. So it's really orange plus a little bit of black, or orange plus a little bit of blue to get that. But it's more of like a yellow orange, because I want this to ultimately look like a yellow block. So this is your gradient starting to take shape. And you'll notice it's a little bit transparent right now. And that's because yellow is kind of a transparent color. We've talked about transparency before, so you want to build that up so that it's ultimately no longer transparent. Yeah, it's kind of hard to see with my hand in the way there. Okay, so you can see the gradient starting to take shape here. So dark brown to a warmer brown. So here's the gradient. So if you're using another color other than yellow, like let's say you're using magenta, you might want to try adding some blue into your magenta instead of black, or a combination of magenta, blue, and black. Black in and of itself can be flat, and it can also be kind of gray. So you always want to mix something in with it. Kind of defining the edge there. If you take your brush and move it sideways, you can get a really crisp edge. And on something like the block, you want to have a sharp edge in places. Not everywhere, but in places you do. Okay, I'm just going to go off camera and coat this with one more coat of paint so it's not transparent on that form shadow side. Okay, so I'm just wrapping it up. And there you can see it's much less transparent, more obviously brown there. Okay, so now we're going to be moving to the other side of the cube. So we'll be working on the mid-tone side. So it's going to be mostly a yellow gold color. So I think I was using the deep yellow there. So just like with the right-hand side, with the form shadow side, it's going to have a little bit of a gradient. It's not going to be yellow deep and then that's it. And when you're painting your sides, you want to make sure that you're filling them all the way to the edge. Even if it goes a little bit outside the cube, that's okay, because you're going to be doing a background on this one. Okay, so I'm going to that upper left-hand corner, and I have a little bit darker value on my brush, similar to what I was just using on that form shadow side, so it's a kind of a brownish color. And I'm putting it in that upper left-hand corner there, because that is not as illuminated as the corner that's in the middle, that central line, that edge that's close to that central line. So there's a bit of a gradient there. Okay, so I just sped this up a little bit. So pure yellow there right at the edge there where the medium side meets the form shadow side. So there are the two sides. We're going to work on the top next. And I actually forgot to film, to press record for the top. So I'm just going to tell you the top is the lightest shade. It's white mixed with your yellow, but it's lighter to the left-hand side and a little bit more intense to the right. There's no black in the top. There's just yellow and white. There's also a little white stripe along the edge there. So right now I'm putting in a background. You can go dark on the background, light in the foreground, or vice versa. So you can go light background, dark in the foreground. You just have to remember when you're doing your cast shadow that your cast shadow is going to pick up a little bit of the flavor of your tabletop or your foreground. So I'm just going to skip ahead here. You're working exactly the same way you did with the sphere. You do want to work your background and your foreground around the form. You don't want there to be white bits of the paper showing through. And it is okay to go loose on the background and on the foreground just like you did before. And you actually don't have to work in this order. You could do the cast shadow first, then background, then foreground. That's fine too. And I realize my line back there is a little bit crooked, so I straightened it up. I am putting a little bit of a shadow right underneath that yellow gold side there. You can see it on the picture. There's a little bit of a dark shadow underneath there. And then I'm pushing the paint right up to the edge. That way it looks like it's sitting on that surface area. Okay, so we're going to be putting in that cast shadow. You want to make sure that the cast shadow is darkest nearest your cube, and then as it falls away from the cube, it's going to get a little bit lighter. So I think I used black, white, and a little bit of blue in there. And you want to go with long strokes that kind of stretch out that shadow a little bit. And I've done this kind of fast. I think your cube can be even better. I bet you can. I bet there are some of you who will do an even better cube than the one I just did. So it is a little bit more complex than just 3 values. Gradients on all 3 sides. Okay, and we'll stop with that.